Let's have a chat about restructures. Now, if you're a leader, and particularly if you're a government sector or agency leader, then you no doubt have not escaped a restructure. Restructures are often the flavour of the moment, and they come about through all different reasons in government, evolving missions, different priorities, different challenges, and also different political people in the leadership positions. Now, in my 15 years in government, I went through at least 5 restructures. Some of you might be saying, 5? That's nothing, right? Because you've probably been through even more if you've been there for a while. But whatever they were labeled, restructures, realignments, rationalizations, whatever they were labeled, they're always challenging. I don't think I've ever met anyone who runs at a restructure and is like completely excited all the time for it. And sure, great opportunities can come out of them for your career, but a lot of people go into that flight, fright, freeze mode. So I want you to think a bit about if you're a leader in a government agency and you're about to put your staff through a change like this, or you're part of the leadership team that has to help them navigate. I really want you to think about how you're going to tackle this. Because quite often, as time goes by, obviously technology changes, processes changes, customer needs change. And so as government and business, we have to shift and reflect those changes. We have to adapt to what's going in the market. We have to be flexible. And we also have to be really cautious that we're using taxpayers' money in the best way possible. So understandably, these realignments come about. But as positions become redundant sometimes, new projects might end, whole processes and procedures, whole departments might be coming to their end. Sometimes for some people, this can be so overwhelming and so difficult to deal with that it has a very big physical, emotional impact on them. And in some ways, what I've noticed as I now coach and mentor organizations and their executives and leadership teams is that what we sometimes see in employees and in the leaders is evidence of trauma from some of this, a bit like you might see with the psychology, I guess, or the cycle of violence that can happen in family violence, for example. And so there's this period of anticipation and anxiety as we start to hear whispers, right, around the corridor, as maybe there's something being discussed at a more senior level and people get wind of that. And so, the grapevine starts. And so some anxiety might come up around that. And then the actual restructure is announced. So then there can be anger and people can be very frustrated with that. Then we can move into actually rolling out the restructure or realignment or whatever that looks like. And I call that the messy middle. It's really this period where everything is kind of mished in together. People don't know who's reporting to who. What does this look like? What's my job going to be like? Am I going to have a job? Do I have to apply for my job? What's going to happen with my business as usual work because of the overwhelm of all of this extra stuff that's going on. And then afterwards, we kind of get into this period of regrouping and trying to go, okay, who's on first, who's on second? What are we doing now? How do we get back to BAU when maybe we have less people in the team, when some of our processes have changed? I'm reporting to someone else now. And so then we get back into this kind of productivity honeymoon phase where everyone goes, okay, this is the new normal. We can start to feel a bit comfortable and certain again until we hear the next whisper of something else. And around and around it goes. And so quite often, if you've been in government for a little while, you're going to see these cycles happen. And it happens in corporates and businesses as well. So research indicates that the success rate of these organizational restructures varies widely. depending on the sector, depending on the size, depending on whether it's just one or two departments or a complete agency or across several agencies. And we've seen this in recent years with a number of state agencies amalgamating and coming together, and then 3 years later getting separated and pulled back apart again. And so it's all this, do we share logos? Don't we? Do we have to change all of our processes? Who's our direct reports? Who do we answer to? Will we have workflow changes? Does our IT systems have to come together? And then pulling them apart again, right? And so we see these things happen, but often they fall short. They fall short of the goals, of the rationalization, of the performance indicators that they were meant to meet, of the productivity gains that they were meant to get. They often fall short because of implementation challenges. It might be resistance to the change and some union activity. It could be just unforeseen external factors. It could be a whole range of things like COVID. And so the change doesn't go as well as people were hoping. And for directors and senior leaders, actually navigating and supporting people through these times of change requires a real finessing of leadership skills. It's not just being a good manager, right? And managerial acumen will only get you so far, but it's not going to help you really steer the ship well through these kind of extreme times of change. What this kind of thing through a restructure demands is really super effective leadership. We have to guide our teams through this uncertainty. We have to ensure continuity of service delivery whilst internally we're going through all this turmoil. And so there's a couple of little, I guess, strategies and techniques that I think are your bedrock minimum essential if you're going to be helping an organization or your team navigate these kind of VUCA, volatile, uncertain times. So first you have to understand the context. What's going on? Why are we getting restructured? For what reason? Is it a political priority? Is it just simply budget constraints and there's been a lockdown and we need to get rid of some layers in the organization in order to save money? Is it because of organizational efficiencies? Is it because we've found two key departments are duplicating effort in some way and we're going to pull those together to rationalize? Is it because we have to realign because there's new laws, new mandates, new ways of doing things? So regardless of what's been the catalyst, we have to think about restructuring introduces into the workplace, into your culture, into your team, uncertainty. And so for your employees, that's going to raise their concerns about job security. Am I securing my job? It's going to disrupt the culture that's there, any workflow that's there. It's going to disrupt team dynamics. And maybe you've been working hard to get highly productive, high performance teams. Well, any news of a restructure is going to shake the ground on which that's on. No matter how solid the team is, it's going to bring up things for people individually. And so collectively, that's going to have an impact as well. And so as a leader, we have to really start to understand how crucial and critical our role is to help maintain some sense of stability, to keep the operations or the wheels turning, but also for the hearts and minds of our dear humans that we're in charge of, to foster some confidence, to support them being resilient, to help them with their well-being, to help them still show up and do their work in a way that is still delivering for the agency or the organization despite the chaos that's around them. And so leaders need to be able to lead during times of uncertainty. And this doesn't mean just issuing directives, sending emails, right? It's not about going, here's the 3 steps, go do it. It's about radical empathy. It's about really thinking about our communication and does it land? And where is the mindset and the psyche of our people when we send out that communication? It's no good to just do a town hall or a blanket email and think that our job is done. And if an executive thinks that we can just write a message, which is usually in bureaucratic, long, wordy speech, divvy that down to a middle manager and expect it to be delivered in the right way, you've got to guess again, right? You have to think about this is a strategic change and it needs proactive engagement. It's not about coming after and just cleaning up a little bit and going, there, people, right? We have to recognize the emotional impact that these changes can have on people. And especially if your team, your agency has been through a range of these. If this is like number 2 or number 3, their buffer of goodwill, the buffer of emotional resilience is going to be squashed right down. And so we have to help people navigate these changes whilst reassuring them simultaneously of why are we here? What's our agency mission and vision, and what are we meant to be delivering to customers? Because everyone naturally is going to be thinking about poor little me and what's going on for me during this change. So, some suggestions. Here are some strategies or some things, I guess, points to really think about. Number 1 is absolutely clear communication. Now, I come from a comms background. My undergraduate and my postgraduate degrees are all in organisational communication. So, of course, this is going to be my favourite part, or the bit that I'm going to bang on about. But communication must be about, did it land with the receivers? How did they receive it? What did they do with the information? Was it useful? Did it meet them where they're at? What I find in most change programs is that the communication is either hit and miss, and it's not consistent. It's not got any empathy at all. It is top down, driven out. And so it's not an engagement in a two-way conversation. So it needs to be clear and consistent. It should address the reasons behind the change or the restructure. It must talk about the impact and how this could impact. It also has to share a bit of the vision for what's on the other side of this. How long will it go for? What can we expect during it? And also the unknowns. I understand during a time of a restructure, quite a lot of it is unknown to the senior leadership team, the executive. They don't know how all of it's going to pan out, right? And so we have to think about, are we being transparent about that? Transparency, vulnerability, being real and honest is how we build trust with people. And ultimately, why would anyone keep following us and keep working with us if we didn't have any trust? So we have to mitigate the rumors and the grapevine and all of the misinformation that's going to come about through time of change. There's going to be people who jump on it, right? And want to undermine everything that's being done. So if you're trying to build a solid organization and it's going through a change like this, your communication must be transparent, it must be clear, and it has to be two-way, a genuine engaged dialogue. So while we're talking about engagement, I recently heard about something similar where they said we're going to engage the staff in the discussion about the changes, but it's not going to change anything. So essentially they were saying, we've already made our mind up of how this restructure is going to go, but we're going to engage in staff to make them feel better that they've had some involvement, even though we've already decided nothing will change. So don't label that as engagement. If that's the case and it can't be changed, then say, we're going to tell you. Be clear about that. There's no negotiable here. Don't falsely tell people we're going to engage and then screw up and throw away their input. People smell a rat like that. So leaders, ideally, we should be seeking input from people at all levels. We should be encouraging constructive feedback. We should involve them in decisions where feasible. And even if it's a fait accompli that jobs are going to go, this is going to change, help them work out how that's going to be phased out. What's a reasonable, feasible way that we can make this work? Yeah. Don't just put it upon people. Enhance morale wherever you can by working with people to get their buy-in and looking for innovative solutions about, okay, we have to get to here, but how we get there, let's talk about that, right? So it's imperative that we actually engage people in genuine conversations. The amount of times I've seen leaders almost shut their door and run away because it's too hard. And I understand difficult conversations during times like these, and they're emotionally loaded, but you have to be honest about it, and you have to be prepared that if you're a leader, you have no right being a leader if you don't do the right thing by your people in this instance. We also have to think about resilience building. So a restructure can create so much uncertainty about my job, about my future career, about my life, about can I pay my mortgage? How am I going to look after my family? That all sorts of anxiety and concern is going to bubble up. I know it has for me. It has for teams that I've been involved in. It's going to happen for your people, and it's going to happen for you. So you have to think about, how do I actively support my people? That might be EAPS and offering an employee assistance program. It could be counseling and those sorts of things. But I think you need to go beyond that, right? You need to really know, where are people at? Maybe there's some mentoring opportunities. Maybe you can help them with some skill development. Maybe you could help them build some resilience and mindfulness training or something to deal with challenges like this. You know, one of the things I saw in the past was a manager of a large team that were going through a restructure, and quite a few people were actually going to lose their job, and quite a few people were going to go into roles that were, let's say, less broad and less fulfilling, a bit more narrow and lower cost. So they were going to earn less, their job was going to have less fulfillment, right? All of that sort of thing. So it was quite ugly. And this manager was required to support their staff to try and keep them upbeat and buoyant. I remember hearing that they'd been told, while at the same time, this exact manager was going to lose their job. So 30% of their workforce are going to lose their job, including them. And they're being told, you've got to keep your team buoyant through this. So that's like a, punch in the face. Imagine a manager knowing they're going to lose their position, but trying to walk out and smile at people. It is literally that, playing the instruments on the Titanic while it sinks. So we have to think about, in times of good times, how are we building our managers and leaders? Are we equipping them with emotional intelligence and resilience skills? But we also have to encourage them to put their mask on themselves. And if they go, do you know what, I cannot see this through because it's too hard for me and I'm going to go and seek other opportunities, we have to support them around that as well, right? We can't just expect them to be the bearer of bad news and to be smiling on the other side. So it's natural that people will resist change. It's natural that people might get aggressive, or at the other end of the scale might be passive and completely disengaged. And so as leaders, we've got to anticipate that that's the fact. We can't assume that everyone's just going to suck it up and accept this. We have to address concerns. We have to understand underlying emotions that are going on for people. And we have to proactively manage that resistance in order to push through maybe the remit of the change that you're going to have to be part of, right? Change initiatives, one or two people aren't necessarily going to change what the whole of government is doing. I particularly love the ADKAR model. I've written about it before. I actually teach quite a bit about it. I love how it focuses the ADKAR 5 elements of transition, and really how it can help you think about, where are my people at? Are my employees, right? And this could be individuals as well as whole teams, but are they in the awareness phase? Are they just aware a change is coming and that it's going to happen? Do they have a desire? Do they want to change or not? Do they want to participate in this, right? K, do they have the knowledge? Do they have the know-how to know, what do I do during a change like this? Do they actually have the ability? Do they need retraining for new roles? Do they have the ability emotionally to handle these changes? And lastly, reinforcement when you actually get there. So having the ADKAR model in mind can really help, I think, in just knowing where people are at, because you might find these 3 of my employees are still at awareness. All they know is that it's happening. Someone else may not have the desire, or might have the desire, but they don't have the knowledge and the know-how. So really thinking about where people are at. And this comes back to what I love, which is the communication part. Are you clear how to communicate depending on the phases that people are in? What I see happen incorrectly most of the time with most of these restructures is that the communication is developed in the boardroom. It is one message, blanket sent out, and we've got it timed. We send out an email this week, we do the town halls next week, we get the managers to say this at their meeting, and then we're done. Oh, isn't that nice? With no I guess, flexibility for knowing where people are at. Because someone who's at awareness is going to need a completely different meaning and message to someone who's at D and desire, to someone else that needs knowledge. So this is where middle managers are the culture carriers. We have to have cultural alignment. We have to know where the middle managers are, and we have to equip them with how to tailor these messages to suit their people for where they're at. So it can't just be top down, blanket out communication. It will never work. And it's why so many change programs and realignments and restructures never actually work or land. They are a waste of time and energy and resources unless they're delivered and delivered well. So I guess finally what I'm trying to say is, if it's a fait accompli and you can't do anything about it, as a leader, know that your role is pivotal in supporting not only the agency that you work for and who pays you, but supporting your dear people, the humans with whom have entrusted you as their leader. We have to support them and guide them through these periods of restructure. Regardless of what you're being told and how that's being delivered to you, make sure you're adapting your communication to be clear, to be fair, to be honest, right? Do whatever you can throughout the whole year, not just in these challenging times, to build the resilience of your people, to encourage their creativity and innovation so that they can have flexibility in their career. They can go, this might be an opportunity for me to look elsewhere, or there's an opportunity in the realignment for me to step up in a different way. Our job as leaders is to support employee well-being, to help navigate this uncertainty, and to give them a sense of grounding and certainty no matter what the wind of change is bringing. I hope this has been a little bit helpful and instructional for you, and I wish you all the best if you are going through and navigating a restructure. Good luck.